Hello guys, so had some free time, and because of the way the last stream ended off, I thought I would do a stream to catch up on everything that I didn't finish the last stream, right? So what was done in the last stream was we were going through part 15. So the reason I'm doing these streams is, well, because I want to record footage for the part 15 video. So in the last stream, we spent 3.5 hours going through the article. It's a really long article, and I was explaining every part of it, the reason for it being coded in a certain way, and why certain variables or why certain classes are linked together that way. And so halfway through, we ran into a little bit of a hitch. So we were coding the PlayerInventory script, and a whole bunch of errors showed up. The errors didn't show up because the scripts had a problem. Well, partially because the scripts had a problem. It's because of the ordering of how we added the scripts. So because we added the PlayerInventory script first before we added the other scripts that it was dependent on, a whole bunch of errors appeared. Then I ended the stream there, and then I said I would reorganize the article and I would come back again. So I am back to finish the job. That was meant to be more dramatic than it turned out, because I always have this shit thing green on my face. Anyway, let's start off with where we left off, or should I say, let's roll back the script all the way back to the item superclass. So in the last stream, this was the last stream, we went all the way to PlayerInventory, and then we got a whole bunch of errors. So let's roll everything back to after we have established the item and the item data classes, and then we will finish up the rest of the article from there. So in the last article where we left off, we created the item and the item data classes. So these classes are meant to serve as a superclass for both. So the item is meant to serve as the superclass for both our weapon as well as our passives, right? And so we actually only set out to redevelop the weapon system, but because the weapon system is linked to the passive system as well, and then these two are used in the inventory system, right? So once we overhaul the weapon system, we have no choice but to overhaul the passive as well as the weapon, the passive, and in a certain way also, because the characters are linked to the passives. So we have to overhaul the passives, and then we have to overhaul the character system as well. So we're gonna roll back whatever we did in coding stream 11 all the way back to item, and then we will talk about, so right after we create the item superclass, right? The next thing that we are going to do before we create the passives, so we need the, wow, this is an ad. Oh, yeah, I was just wondering if I was sharing my screen right. Anyway, so after we create the item class, in the last video we went on to create the passives class, but before we do that, we actually have to create a new character data scriptable object. This is so that the passives class can work properly. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's create the character data scriptable object, and then after that we will see why this is the case. Okay, so the main reason why the character data scriptable object is created is because we need the character data, so that the character data has this struct inside here, and we need this struct to be able to create our passives. Okay, let's go through whatever's in the character data script together. So in our blog, I've added this nifty little feature. Now if you click on this, the heading of a script, you are able to copy it. So it's a really great way to, well, it makes everything easy to use, right? So let's go back to Unity, and then from here, what we are going to do, let me just check streaming correctly. What we're gonna do is we're gonna create a new script, and we're gonna call this character data. We're gonna put this inside the player folder. And character data is meant to replace character scriptable object. Character scriptable object allows us to create scriptable objects for the player, like that. So what we're gonna do in the redesigned character data, we just want to replace the stats that we have over here with a new set of stats that's inside a struct that we can also use for our passives. That's the reason why we're creating the character data class first before the passives. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna replace the starting weapons variable from a game object, aka a prefab, to using weapon data. So it's a pretty simple change. The changes are all highlighted in the article here. So we change the starting weapon over from a game object to weapon data, and then we of course set the getters and setters of starting weapon to use weapon data instead. And then the main change, as we see here, is in this struct here, the stats struct. So let's copy and paste this into our project first. So in the player folder, I'm gonna create a new character data, and this will be a scriptable object, right? So I'm gonna obsolete the character scriptable object. So this will be obsolete, and then character data, character scriptable object goes inside here, and then character data is meant to replace it. So it's really convenient now. You can just click on this header here, and then just paste everything into your script. So another reason to join our Patreon, because you get access to all our articles, which all have this feature now. So let's go through what the structs, the stats structs is meant to do. So previously in our weapon script, we also had a struct like that where we have stats, and then the entire variable type is weapon.stats. So why do we have that? We had that because we wanted a way to manage our stats as an entire object. The main reason we have this, so inside the stats struct, we have all the different stats that the character has. So the character is supposed to have 19 different stats. So as we go on and develop more stats for our character, we can just add to the stats struct over here, and it will be automatically added to our character and to anywhere else that's using the character data.stats struct. So over here we have a constructor, and this constructor is just there for us to set a default value for these values here. And more importantly, we have this plus operator, which works the same as the plus operator in our weapon.stats struct. It allows us to add multiple stats objects together, and it basically lets us, later on when we code the passives, you will see this in action when we code the passives later. Let me just turn down the background music a little bit. So when we code the passives later, we are gonna have to add stats together. So we're gonna add the base stats of the character with our passive. So we're gonna, let's say we have 3 passives, right? Every passive will have a set of stats that it, a set of stat boosts that it confers. So then the character's base stats, every stat boost from all the passives will go into the character's base stats. And then by using the plus sign, this allows us to operate on the stats a lot easier instead of having to pull out every stat one by one and then adding to that stat. Okay, let me show you what I mean. So with the set struct over here, with objects that use the character data stats struct, we will be able to do something like this. So for example, with actual stats equals to base stats plus the passive item stat increments. So later on when we do the passives, you will see this in action. And then the constructor I've just talked about before, the constructor is just a way for us to set default values to all of these. Okay, so once we have the character data struct, what you will see is that you will become able to create a new type of object called the character data scriptable object. Just give me a moment because it's not showing up. Let me just resave the file so that Unity recompiles everything. There we go. So when we have the character data, you see now the stats are here, and then for us to assign the weapon to a character, previously we would have to create a prefab and then put the weapon inside. now we just have to put whatever, this is the knife asset that we've created in the last strip. So you just put a knife and then you select the sprite for the player and then you give the player a name and then you set the stats for the player. Okay, so you will see the stats here are pre-filled. The reason that the stats here are pre-filled is because I have a constructor for character data and then it sets these default values. And then of course when I declare the variable for the character data itself, I set a default value for the stats. Okay, so then this sets the max health and then the rest of the values are set using the default values for the optional parameters, which is how we get the values over here. So with the character data all set up, we are now able to move on and create our passives. But before we create our passives, we have to also update this class called the CharacterSelector. Okay, what is the CharacterSelector? CharacterSelector is just a class that is used inside our menu screen. Over in the menu screen, we have a CharacterSelector here, which when you click on any of the buttons here, the character data gets set, and then this CharacterSelector gets sent over to the game screen, where the character data or the character scriptable object is passed to the game manager, and the game manager initializes the character. So basically the CharacterSelector, its job is just when we click on one of these buttons, it will set the character data here to the appropriate character data. So we've got to update this class because it uses character scriptable object, which is obsolete. Alright, so I would also go into the character scriptable object and just label the script as obsolete. So system obsolete, this has been replaced by character data. What this will do is this will make it so that whenever we use a character scriptable object, we will see a warning like this. This is for the weapon scriptable object. Alright, but you will see a similar warning also for wherever you have a script that uses character scriptable object. So this tells you whenever you mark something as obsolete, this tells you what script you have to update so that you can use the new weapon system. So in our script over here, oh hi Robert, so I just saw your message. How can you find a bug very fast? Well, it's thanks for noticing that. It's just years of coding experience, you know. It's you just gotta code more. So a lot of so one of the things I do as a job is I teach people how to code in universities, and one of the things I tell my students is to learn programming is not about going to class, it's about debugging a lot of stuff. So the more you debug, the better you'll get at it. And once you can debug anything, then you can code anything. So debugging is really the thing that you have to learn in coding, not the coding itself. Because coding is pretty easy, like because once you know what you want to write, you just gotta write it down. But it's the little mistakes that cause your code not run that's where the real frustration is, and that personally was the biggest hurdle for me to jump over when I was learning coding. Hope I answered your question. So you can use our forums. So if you run into bugs, when you have some guidance to help you with your first few bugs, right, it will help to make your debugging journey easier. So we have our forums for that. So please head over there. If you have any questions, if you have bugs, just take a screenshot, leave it there, and you know, because I got no life, I'll go to the forums and respond to all your questions about bugs and all that. How long have I been using Unity? Okay, interesting story. Actually, I used to use Unreal a lot more. So then I was first engaged to teach games programming class 7-8 years ago, and then I didn't know any Unity then. I only knew how to code. So that was, yeah, I've been using Unity for 7+ years. Yeah, there you go. Okay, let's continue with the. I just went to my streaming window to check whether I was sharing the screen and whether the mic was working. So where did I leave off? It's the character selector class, right? By the way, thank you for tuning into the stream. It's really encouraging whenever I see, even if it's just 2 viewers or 3 viewers or 5 viewers. It's nice, you know, to have people who find your content helpful. Okay, that's the most challenging part of creating content on YouTube. To find something that is not brainless and then something that, you know, people actually want to watch, you know, and it's useful to the people who we are creating this for. So we are going to the CharacterSelector class, and then from here we just gotta update the class over here from CharacterScriptable object to CharacterData, and then same thing over here. So the free article also highlights all of these changes. So over here it's CharacterData as well, and then this will remain the same. Yeah, so it's just updating the respective stuff over here. So in CharacterData, in the CharacterData function, we actually have, let me just copy this whole thing. So right now we have this new feature as well, as when you copy this thing, right? It doesn't copy the cancelled out parts anymore. So if you were to just copy and paste it, then all the cancelled scripts will be missing from here, which is really helpful, right? Because then you don't have to go and eyeball everything. So one thing that has changed in our code over here is the get data function. So previously it was just one line, and then right now it has a couple of extra lines. Okay, the reason for that is because if you were to try and play the game from the game screen now, let me just okay, there's an error here, so I cannot play the game. But if I were to go to the game, you probably have tried, if you've been following this series, you've tried this before as well. If you try and play the game and there are no compile errors, you will not be able to move your character from the game's seat. This is because a character has not been selected, so then because there is no character, the game cannot run. So what this get data function does is it basically tries to find a random character data file to put into the to return as the character data. So this doesn't always work, regrettably. This doesn't always work, so I will come back and improve upon this. Sometimes it works for this, sometimes it doesn't work because it doesn't always find character data files inside the resources class. Okay, so this is intended to make our lives easier as developers. Doesn't 100% work, unfortunately. Alright, so most of this script is just updating the CharacterScriptable object to character data. Okay, once you do that, just save the script, and then everything should work. So the moment we change the character selector to use character data, we will get another error on PlayerStats, and that's because now the PlayerStats class doesn't use character data, it uses CharacterScriptable object. So the character selector is giving it a character data, which is why it's throwing an error. Okay, so if we scroll further down, the other thing we want to update beforehand is that we have a function in Game Manager that also uses CharacterScriptable objects. Okay, so now we have to find all our CharacterScriptable objects and update them to character data. So let's go to the Game Manager. There's only one line in Game Manager that uses CharacterScriptable object. So we just gotta hop on over here and then just find it. Or you can always just copy the code, right? Up to you. Okay, so I'm just gonna find where CharacterScriptable object is right here, and then just replace it. So after that, okay, so we have, oh, I missed this error the last time. When I was rewriting the article, I seem to have missed this. Is this an error, or is this this is an error? I should probably leave a note on the article, right? That says that once you update the character data script, then you will have to update the codes all the way to section wow, it's a lot of section. Probably have to update the code all the way to section 13 before we can get the code to work again. So this is the line that has the problem, but we have to code everything. Okay, give me a moment to update the article. So I want to try and make the article as easy to use as possible, because this is gonna be a big part, and programming is already as frustrating as it is. There's no reason the article should make it harder on you guys to get what you want to do. Okay, so we're back on the article. Let's edit the post. Okay, so the problem actually arises only after we update the character selector. So let me just leave a note here that says, once you update the character selector, use character data, you will need to update your code all the way to part 13, right? Let's see, all the way to part, yes, part 13. All the way to part 13 below, before your project will be free of error. This is because we will need to replace the parts of our code that use all the process. Okay, there we go. We just add that as a node. Okay, let's go back to, okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is to create passives. So now that the character selector is updated, the game manager is updated. Okay, we'll recreate passive items. Okay, how do we recreate passive items? So what do passives do? So we want our passives to offer a similar interface to our weapon stats system. So our weapons have been updated so that the weapon data contains data for all the weapons levels. Okay, so over here you see we have, say this is for the knife, right? Okay, it has the icon here, the max level, it has the stats for level 1, projectile for level 1, and for level 2, level 3, level 4, and so on. Okay, so with the weapon data, you have everything that you need to create the weapon, all the data that you need. So we want our passives to work the same way. So we have two scripts over here. We have passive, and then we also have passive data, right? So if we just copy and paste the codes into our project, we will put them in, well, they will be in the project if we copy and paste them into the project. Sorry, had a brain fart had a brain freeze just now. So once you copy the passive and passive data, okay, so how the passive system works is that the passive data will serve as the data for our passive weapons. And then what we want is for an interface like this. Is similar to the weapons interface, but it's also much simpler. What is simpler about it is that our passive data is essentially just going to have, so the stats over here and the growth, they are the same thing. Okay, maybe I'll just fix the issue with the player stats over here, then I can show you what I mean. Let me just head in here and just very quickly change this to character data. This should fix my errors with player stats, right? Okay, this doesn't fix the errors with the player stats. Okay, we have to come back to this later. Okay, so what a passive is essentially is it's just a boost to our character stats. So how the passive works is really in passive script, we have the main thing that we have here is we have this thing called a modifier. So every passive will confer a modifier to the character. Confer means give. So every passive will give a modifier to the player character. And the modifier is just going to have three things. It's going to have a name, it's going to have a description, and it's going to have all the boosts that it gives to the player. And what does the boost variable use? The boost variable uses CharacterData.stats. Okay, this is defined in CharacterData, right? So why does it use CharacterData.stats? Because you can add the stats together, right? Okay, later on in PlayerStats, you will see how this is implemented. So we have modifiers, and then basically we have in the passive we have all the current boosts that the passive is currently applying to the player. So when we initialize the passive, we just retrieve the boosts that the passive confers. And then of course we have get boost, which returns the current boost that the passive confers. So what is this current boost thing? Okay, this is basically our passives are gonna level up in the same way that our weapons level up, our passives will level up as well. So in our weapon, you will see that we have the base stats over here, and then the stats in level 2 adds to the stats in level 1, and then the stats to level 3 adds to the existing stats, and so on and so forth, right? So our passives are going to work the same way, where we have the base stats, and then level 2 will add to the base stats. Okay, it adds 0.1 movement speed to the base stats. Level 3 will add a set of boosts to the base stats as well. So then whenever we want to retrieve the boosts for the passive, we will just have to access current boosts, which is the sum of all the bonuses that the passive confers from level 1 all the way to the level that you're at. Alright, so this is the entire system. Is just to use the modifier, and then it just adds all the modifiers together to give us the current number of boosts that we have. And then when we level up, this is when we calculate all the boosts that the passive gives us. So when we level up, basically we're just adding the boosts of that current level to all the boosts that we already have from the passive. And then if you cannot level up, of course it returns false, and then it mentions why this is failing. Okay, the base to level up, this refers to the level up function inside the item class, which is right here. Yeah, so do level up actually does nothing, so we don't have to call base dot do level up. Okay, it's just there. You can call it, it doesn't really do anything, so it's fine whether you call it or not. Okay, this is probably just an oversight on my part. Okay, so I will just create. I am gonna just create the passive script, then I will just paste the code. Okay, so you're gonna have to paste the code for passive data as well, or you can copy or you can write it. If you don't want to copy the code, you can write it by hand as well. Okay, it can help you to get more acquainted with the code. It's up to you. You have the option whether to just copy the whole thing or to write it yourself. Okay, let me just go through passive data. Passive data is going to be very straightforward. It just stores the base stats and then it stores the levels. Okay, the rest of the data on the passive data game object is inherited from the item superclass. Okay, the evolution data, you're not going to have it first. We will implement this later on when we add some more code for the item class. So the main stats that passive implements is just the base stats, which is the base number of boosts plus the growth. Okay, so later we can just directly add all the boosts to the player character. Okay, you will see how this works later on when we get to the player stats. Okay, so the passives class, what it does is that when I set out to redesign the passives class, I wanted to avoid the same problem that we had with our weapon system, which was that for every single level that your weapon has, you have to create one prefab and then one scriptable object. So if you had a wings object that had 8 levels, you would have 16 objects, 8 prefabs and then 8 scriptable objects. Okay, not very sustainable because everything is in a different file, and it becomes very difficult to manage. But if everything is in one file, then things are going to be so much easier to deal with. Yeah. And then also the other benefit of the new passive system is that for the old passive system, we also had to create a new script for every passive that we have, because we didn't have an implementation where we use like the stats object. So then every passive had to manually specify which stat it affected, and then it just changed the stat directly. So because it changes the stat directly, there was also the drawback that if you remove the passive item, for some reason, if you want to remove the wings item from the player's inventory, you cannot undo the effect, because the current moves here, the player will be affected by a lot of other multipliers. So if you multiply a lot of stuff inside, and maybe you have power-ups and stuff, right? So it's gonna be difficult to get back the original value, because you have to multiply your current moves by the inverse of this. And there can be many things that can affect your player's move speed that maybe you didn't record, which causes you to not be able to figure out what the player's speed was before you got the buff from the passive. So later you will see how I handle this when we rework the player stats. Okay, we actually store a copy of the base stats of the player, and then we will actively recalculate the player stats based on the base stats and the number of passive items that the player has. Okay, this will make it so that it's easy for us to add a buff and remove a buff from the player character later on. This is why also the struct is called a modifier. Okay, because you want to store a copy of every stat modification on the player as an object. Okay, passive data is just designed to be like weapon data. Sorry, my brain stopped for a while there. Okay, last thing we gotta do is we will add this recalculate stats function to the player stats script. Okay, here's how we're gonna do it. Under player stats, we will add a recalculate stats. Okay, this recalculate stats script later on is gonna be used to recalculate the stats of our player character. Okay, so it's gonna find the same spot, or you can put it any spot that you want. Okay, you don't necessarily have to put it here. Anywhere that you want, you can put it. Okay, this is called by the passive class. Okay, if you see, whenever we add, oh sorry, this is not called by the passive class, this is called by the player inventory class. Later on you will see in the player inventory class, that is the new inventory system. Whenever we add a passive, we will actually recalculate the stats of the player. So anytime we add a passive, or anytime a passive levels up, we will recalculate the stats. Okay, so once we modify the player stats with this new function here, we are ready to code the new inventory system. New inventory system is a simplification of the old inventory system. Okay, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to get player stats working with the new script before I'm able to show you this. But the old system had a lot of different variables, whereas the new system has only 5 variables. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy and paste the script, both scripts from here, and then I can show you in my project. I think that will be easier for all of us. So the item system is gonna be in the player folder. It's meant to replace the inventory manager, so I'm gonna move the inventory manager to obsolete. And then I'm gonna just create a new script here called PlayerInventory. Okay, so I'll just copy and paste it here. Let me just get the player stats script as well, then I'll explain both of them together. Alright, so let's get the player stats script right here, all the way at the bottom. And then I'll paste it into the old player stats script. Okay, so with these two parts assembled, let's run through the script for the player inventory first. Player inventory is meant to replace the inventory manager right here. Okay, so you can uncheck the inventory manager, and then you can add. This should be the player inventory script. Okay, I had a missing item here because previously I tried to add the player inventory script inside. And okay, so the player inventory script's improvement over the inventory manager is that the inventory manager, how it works is that for all the weapons, you have 3 variables here: weapon slots, weapon levels, and weapon UI slots. Okay, why do we need to store a copy of the weapon levels? Because the weapon slots themselves, remember the weapons are all different prefabs, so the weapons themselves don't track which level they are in. With our new system, the weapon tracks our levels, so we no longer have to store the weapon level, okay, which makes things a lot easier. And then weapon slots and weapon UI slots. Okay, what does weapon UI slot refer to? It refers to the 6 slots that we have on the UI that shows our item icons. Alright, so with the new system, what I've done is I've simplified the interface of this. Okay, instead of having the slots as separate variables from the slots that store the weapon, the UI slots, instead of them being separate variables, I've combined them so they use the same variable. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so under PlayerInventory here, you will see that weapon slots here has nothing inside, so I'm going to add 6 items. Okay, so for every slot that we have, we actually have 2 things that we can assign here. We have item and then we have image. The item we will just leave it empty because as we get items, this will become assigned. But we will have to find the slots and assign them into the weapon slots for the weapon inventory. Okay, that's all here. Okay, and then we do the same for sorry, deselected the player inventory. So we do the same case. So we have 6 slots, right? So we only need 0 to 5. That's 6 slots. Okay, so we do the same for the passives, which have the same setup. So notice that we are combining these 2 variables together into one, okay, to make everything neater. So passive, we have 6 slots as well, and then we have to assign the UI element. Okay, I'm gonna automate the process of assigning the UI elements later on. Okay, somewhere down the line in the series, we can automate this so that the whole system becomes easier to use. Okay, so these variables here, like the weapons, they will be automatically assigned. Alright, so what's going on here? Okay, what's going on here is in the PlayerInventory script, we have a new struct called slots. Okay, so let me use the article. It's easier to explain using the article. So what does the slot struct do? Okay, this is the one of the main changes to the new inventory system. Okay, is we have a class called slot. This is a nested class, and this is supposed to represent a slot inside the inventory. Okay, what does a slot contain? It contains an item, right? Item can be either a weapon or it can be a passive. And inside every slot, we have to track the UI equivalent of the slot, because whenever we obtain a new item, we have to assign the image of the item to the UI element, right? So this is the UI element that contains the sprite of the item, and this is the item itself. Okay, inside the class, I've also created a couple of functions that we can use to assign the slot. So we can assign an item to a slot, and by assigning the item to the slot, we are also assigning the image of the slot. So we assign the item, and then we check if the item is a weapon. If it is, then we will convert the item to a weapon, and then of course assign the item, assign the icon of the item to the UI image. Okay, same thing for passive. We convert this to a passive, and then we assign the icon of the passive to the UI element. Okay, and then we leave a message here that says assign the item to the player. We also have a function to clear the slot, so we can assign an item to the slot. We can also remove items from the slot. And then thirdly, we have a function to check whether the slot is empty. Okay, these are just functions for convenience, because whenever we assign an item or whenever we remove the item, we also have to update the UI. So we are just making the action of updating the UI together with updating the item itself. Alright, and then when we assign the item, we will look into the item, or we will look into the data of the item to retrieve the icon. Okay, because the icon is inside the data itself, right? It's not actually inside the item or the weapon or the passive itself. Okay, so the rest of the UI elements are the same. So we have available weapons here, which is actually the same as in player in the inventory manager, where we have weapon upgrade options. Okay, But then the weapon upgrade options was a little more complex compared to our new system. Okay, let's have a look at it from the slide, from the article. So what do we have in the article? Okay, I've explained the slots. Okay, I've also explained how these three are combined into one, and then these three are combined into one. Okay, and then for weapon upgrade options, why is it changed to available weapons? Okay, in the new system, all you gotta do to determine what weapons are available for you to upgrade when you level up, you just gotta add the list. Okay, so later on when we create all the different weapons, we can just assign different weapons, the weapon data of these different weapons to the available weapons, and then these weapons will show up in your level up script. Okay, this is different from the old system where you had to do the same thing. Alright, you had to do the same thing, but the interface was more complex. Okay, so for every weapon that you have to add the level 1 prefab of the weapon. You also have to add the weapon data of the weapon. And then you have to index all of them from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay, this makes it a little more cumbersome, right? Because you have to assign a lot of stuff just for one weapon. Why do that when you can have a system where you just have to assign the weapon data? Okay, and this is how the PlayerInventory script was recoded, to make things easier to use, to make it easier for you to assign the weapons that are available for your player when you level up. Okay, same thing for the passives. Instead of having to assign a whole bunch of objects and then having to index the objects, you just have to assign the passive data right now. Okay, a big quality of life change. Okay, and then these are, of course, these variables are provided by the following lines in the new PlayerInventory script. We just declare a list of weapon data and we declare a list of passive data, available weapons, and available passives. Okay, so one of the things that the new weapon system is capable of doing is, when you supply the weapon data, automatically it will try and create a game object for you, so you don't have to prefab every weapon that you have. Right? In the old system, if you wanted a weapon, you had to create a prefab for the weapon's behavior, and then you had to create a script for the weapon's behavior, and then you also have to create a prefab for the weapon's projectile, and then of course you have to create all the data for the weapon. Okay, this is a lot of components and it makes everything a lot more confusing than it should be. Okay, right now you just supply the weapon data and then the game object will be created for you. You do not have to generate a prefab. Okay, so there are new functions in the PlayerInventory script as well. Okay, in the old inventory manager, one of the main benefits of the new PlayerInventory script is in the old weapon inventory manager, whenever you wanted to add a weapon, you had to supply two arguments. Okay, a slot as well as the weapon prefab. Okay, so this was a little difficult because then whenever you want to add a weapon from, let's say, from the treasure chest or from somewhere else, okay, every script is gonna have to define its own code to identify which slots are free. So this has been changed so that now you use the add function, and the add function will just require the item data. Automatically it will find an empty slot for you, and automatically it will create a game object for you, so you do not have to create a prefab to contain the item itself. Okay, so in the old system, because we had to identify the slot index that is empty ourselves, in PlayerStats we also had to have a spawn weapon function, because this spawn weapon function, what it does is it tries to find an empty slot before it assigns the weapon. Okay, this job has been relegated to the new inventory management system, because the new inventory management system uses this new function called add, which automatically finds an empty slot for you. So there's also a remove function. So in the old inventory manager script, there wasn't a remove function, so there was no way for you to remove a weapon. Okay, this has been, to remove a weapon or to remove a passive, this has been rectified. And the reason this has been rectified is because later on when we do weapon evolution, right, the weapon evolution will need to remove the passives or remove the just the passives, right? Sorry, not passives, the weapon. So the evolution will have to remove our active weapon. So for example, if you combine garlic and you combine Palmarola, the garlic is removed and replaced with the soul eater. So we need a remove function to remove the items from our inventory when we evolve our weapon. So lastly, the weapon evolution functions in the old inventory manager have also been removed. This is because we will handle this in the item class later. Okay, so finally we get to player stats. Okay, so in player stats, what we are doing is we are just doing two main things. First thing is that we are updating all the character scriptable object to refer to character data. And then we are also changing how the stats of the player are recorded. So previously the stats of the player, they are recorded inside individual variables. Okay, so what you will see with your player stats is you will see current strength, current recovery, and so on, right? So you have to set all of these individually. Okay, now everything is set inside the character data.stats field. Okay, so what this means is that your stats are actually now stored inside. Sorry, I pressed Ctrl F by accident, Ctrl S by accident. So what this means is that your player stats are actually have a base stats and then an actual stats. Okay, you don't have to set this. Okay, later on these will be set by the character data. Okay, so why do we have two sets of stats? Okay, as I have talked about before, we need a set of the base stats of the character so that we can recalculate the stats of the character, because we have to recount all the passive boosts, all the power-ups, etc, etc. Okay, otherwise, if we do not recount the stats when we remove a passive, things will get messy very quickly. Okay, so one of the main things is we store a copy of base stats, and then we also store a copy of the actual stats, and then we use the recalculate stats function, which is right here, okay, to calculate the actual stats. Okay, so whenever the player receives a new passive, we will call recalculate stats, and what it does is that it will set the actual stats to base stats, and then it will run through every passive in the player inventory, and then it will add the boosts of the passive to the actual stats. Okay, so the stats are constantly being recalculated, and by recalculating the stats like that, we make sure that the boosts always apply the correct stats. Okay, if you were to just add the stat without any way to remove it or without any reference to the initial stats, it's very easy for you to get confused and then to not know what are the base stats and then what are the boosts from the passives. Okay, so this is one of the changes. The other change is just once we do that, then we just have to remove the references to the old stat system, which again was individual variables. Okay, and then the other thing was, of course, we replaced the inventory manager with the PlayerInventory. Okay, so then there's one whole section of the code where we are just updating all the getters and setters of our existing stats, right? Because in the old player stats code, we had an entire region where we had getters and setters for all our stats. Okay, this has been retained temporarily because otherwise it will break too many parts of our other codes. Okay, so later on when we get to these other codes, we might remove all these getters and setters. Okay, right now they are just there for backward compatibility. Okay, so the last thing that changes in the player stats is some of the old functions have been removed. So for example, here we have spawn passive item, and then we also have spawn weapon. Okay, these have been removed because now you just gotta go to the player inventory and then just call the add function to add either a passive or to add a weapon. Okay, so the rest of these updates are just okay, this is not needed anymore. The rest of the updates are just to, first, there's no more max health variable, right? So then we're just changing this to retrieve the actual stats. Okay, I'm not sure why this should be green, this shouldn't be red. Just give me a moment to update this. So I'm just updating the article because there are some minor typo errors inside. Just give me a quick moment, I'll be back before you know it. So we were going through the updates to the PlayerStats class. And then I was explaining why the changes were made the way they were. And just let me check through to see if the updates went through. There we go. Now this is green, this is green, this is still red. I'll find this one. The rest of it is green. Okay, let me find the last thing over here. This should be green as well, not red. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the article documents the same things. So you can read through it, it's still free. Right now, I may actually decide to just make it free perpetually because the article does a lot of work in explaining, and it's a lot easier to consume, right, than a video, than a whole video. So changing the way that stats are managed, just as we mentioned. Backward compatibility for stats. Okay, this is because there's a whole bunch of getters and setters that we have kept, and then that refer to the new actual stats instead of referring to the old stat variable. So we updated all the getters and setters to refer to the actual stats instead of referring to the old current health, current magnet, current speed, etc, etc. Okay, the last thing in the player stats code also is that we have made a minor improvement to the damage feedback code. So this was in part 13. We updated the player stats to show a particle effect whenever the player takes damage, and the particle effect is created using this line. Okay, so we added a destroy, we wrapped it around destroy so that we will automatically destroy this object after 5 seconds. Okay, so in part 13 what we did was we told you to set the player damage VFX stop action to destroy. So this will automatically destroy the particle effect after the particle effect finishes playing. But if you forget, then your particle effect will be left in the game forever, and then this will cause a memory leak because you have an object that stays there and does nothing. So this is just a fail-safe, so that even if we forget to set a stop action, the particle effect will anyway be destroyed. And of course, we updated player stats to read from CharacterData. Okay, this is self-explanatory. Okay, now that we have everything set up, we can start test out our new weapon system. So first thing we will have to do is we will have to go to the menu C, and then we will have to update the buttons in the C. Do I have to save the change? Yeah, I want to save the changes. Okay, I saw some new questions in the chat, so maybe let me just take some time to answer them. So Spyros, you are thinking of following our Vampire Survivor series by using Godot and GD script and make it your own after you get comfortable enough. Do I think that's valid? I think it's gonna be a bit of a challenge. It depends on how similar the code bases are. So if Godot works very similarly to Unity, then you can do it. So if Godot uses C# or if GD script is, because I don't know how Godot works, I haven't used it a lot. So if GD script is very similar to Unity and Godot uses the same game object component system, then you can do a one-to-one port. Otherwise, I think it's gonna be quite a challenge if the engines are gonna be very different, and chances are the engines are gonna be very different. So I don't know enough about the inner workings of Godot to be able to tell you whether Unity is a better option or Godot is a better option. You can explore it, you can try it yourself, and you can maybe let me know what you find and what your experience with it is like. Hi Arif, thanks for the well wishes. Happy New Year. So let's get back to work. So we have to head over to the menu screen now, and we will have to update the button here. And what we want to do is just update the button to, so we're gonna have to reselect there's gonna be a missing character selector here because just now we changed the character selector's function, right? So now we just have to reselect the select character function, and then we have to assign our character data. Okay, I'm gonna hide the other button for now because we don't have a garlic character set up. Okay, we only have the knife character set up. Okay, so maybe I'm just gonna go here and just set a sprite for the character as well. So okay, maybe I'll just it's just a random sprite, alright. I don't know what to assign there. Okay, so just update the character selector. Okay, so after that you have to replace the inventory manager with PlayerInventory. That's already done. And then in the available weapons array, you also want to, okay, in the available weapons array, what is this? This is in the okay, so we replace this, and then in the available weapons, you want to add the knife. Passives, we will just leave it empty for now. So what's gonna happen here is that we will assign the knife here. Okay, I'm gonna just put the knife inside scriptable objects here as well. And then I'm just gonna get this to be obsolete, and then I'll put all the old weapons inside. And then now I can move my knife scriptable objects folder. So this knife shouldn't be in the scripts folder. I left it in the scripts folder in the last stream. So I'm just gonna drop it in weapons here. Weapons, doesn't go into weapon. Oh, it's the same folder. Sorry, wrong folder. Okay, so I'm just dropped it into the weapons folder under scriptable objects. So we have all the obsolete old weapon systems, and then we have the new knife. So you can also create a couple of passives if you want. Okay, let's maybe just do it together. So I'm just gonna obsolete the old passive system, old passive weapons. Then let's create a new passive together, right? I haven't shown you how to do that. So for the passives, maybe let's say wings. Okay, so passives are very easy to use. Okay, you just gotta assign you just have to assign a sprite to them. Where's my sprite? Let me lock this, and I can just find a suitable sprite here. I'm sure we have some wings somewhere. Okay, let's just drop the shield inside as a sprite. Okay, and then next level is 8. So the wings is gonna be pretty. This is wings. Red Bull gives. I don't know what the description is. You're gonna have to go into Vampire Survivors site and then find the description. Right, move speed 0.1. This is 10% boost, right? So every level that you have another 10% boost. So this is level 2. Red Bull gives you more. And here 0.1 again, and then we just copy this and then just keep pasting. So it's should be duplicate. So just gonna keep duplicating this. Level 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, wings only has 5 levels, right, actually, so we can remove the rest. I recall wings only having 5 levels and it just boosts your move speed by 10% every time. Okay, so passives are very easy to set up, right? You just set up the weapon data and you're done. Okay, so this is wings. And then we also want to do it for something else like camera roller or for like the other stuff. So let's go back to passive items. Wings. So we have one for wings. Let's create another passive data for camera roller. That's the regeneration, right? So sorry, wings should be 5 levels. So we can also duplicate the wings, but if you want to duplicate it, I have to go to show in Explorer. Then I have to duplicate the wings asset like that. Then I don't have to recreate all the stats in camera roller. So let me just delete this. And then I duplicated the wings, and then let's just call it Palmarola. And then now I can update Palmarola. Palmarola will be a different icon, right? Okay, so maybe it's just a heart. So I'll just find something red. Again, it's 5 levels, not 8. Why is my wings having 8 levels? It's 5 levels. Okay, so this will be Palmarola. So you get the idea, right? So is region. Okay, so Palmarola will be recovery of 0.2, right? And then level 2 is the same thing. Gives more region. Yeah, this will be 0.2. And then again, I'm just gonna duplicate the array elements accordingly. Right, so level 2, and then just duplicate this, level 3, level 4, level 5. So level 3, level 4, and then level 5. Okay, so these are all the passives. Okay, so we have 2 passives and then we have 1 weapon, right? So maybe let's just create one more passive. Again, I'm just gonna right click, show in Explorer, so that I can copy and paste the wings asset again, and then I'll just name this what should we, spinach. Okay, and then for the spinach, let's call it spinach makes you like just a random bunch of words. Let's find something green for it. And it looks like a spinach. And then spinach will be increases your might by 10%, right? So might will be 0.1. Then this gives more muscle. And might is 0.1. And again, I will delete all the old entries. And then just to fastest way to do it, right? Just to duplicate level 2 and just level, because it's all 10%, 10%, 10%, right? So by doing this, we now have a bunch of passives, and then we can assign the passives to the inventory, the PlayerInventory script. Okay, so available passives, we have 3 of them, so that we have enough stuff to level up. So we have wings, we have spinach, we have Palmarola. So passives are very easy to do as compared to weapons, because passives, just create a passive data, assign them to the PlayerInventory, and then they can be used right away. So okay, so once we do that, we can test the knife. So let's just save, and then for the knife, I'm just gonna make sure that it's set up properly, right? So knife over here, let's assign a sprite to it. So this is the sprite for knife. Then we have some level data, right? Only up to 5, but it's fine. And knife projectile is set up, so let's just play this. So if I play this, you will notice that I'm not able to move around. That's because we will have to start from the menu screen. Okay, we will fix this later on in future part. Okay, so one thing you'll find is that the knife moves really slowly. and then it pushes me away. That's because I didn't set the knife projectile properly. Let's rectify that. So the speed of the knife, it shouldn't be 1. Let's try 10. Okay, and then for the prefab of the knife. So the knife projectile is a prefab. So then I forgot to make the collider a trigger. That's the other thing I forgot to do with the knife. So let's try this again and let's play, and then we should get the knife shooting out. Okay, so with the player character as well, I think I didn't set the character data properly. So the new character data, where's our new character data? Okay, so let's call this Gennaro. This is our knife character, right? And then let's find this character and just drop him inside the player, the character scriptable object folder. Again, I'm gonna obsolete the old characters. And then now let's set the speed of the character to, let's say 4 or something, not so pathetically slow, right? Or maybe 5. 5 sounds good. Okay, and we can test the speed is still really slow. Maybe the character data hasn't been saved. Let's see what's going on. Character is still slow. So let's check the stats. Okay, so the knife works. Oh, why do we have, we have a, so the knife works, but we seem to be missing something. The player is moving really slow, so I have to check the actual stats. Okay, it turns out I modified the wrong stat, so it's not speed, this is supposed speed, right? Silly me. So now the character works properly. So the funny thing is that the it seems like the damage numbers are not appearing. Let me just dive into why that might be the case. So in Game Manager here we have, do we have the generate floating text? Okay, I think I didn't implement the part 14 codes inside here. I will have to update the Game Manager's code actually. Okay, I'll get to that later. Okay, let's move on first. So, okay, so once we set everything up, you will see the knife starts working. Okay, so the last thing we will have to do here is to get the weapon evolution system to work. And what does that entail? That entails, okay, so let me explain what's going on with the item data. Okay, so in item data, we define a new little struct here called evolution. And then evolution has a whole bunch of things. It's easier for us to, okay, let me just copy and paste all of this stuff and then I'll explain this to you in Unity itself. Okay, it's easier for me to do that. So let me just get item and then item data as well into my code base. There we go. So once we do that, okay, what you will find is that the item is a superclass, right? So it's an abstract superclass. So what it means is that whenever we update the item, we actually update our weapon data as well as our passive data. Okay, like our wings, our spinach, our palm roller, and so on. Okay, so it adds this evolution data tab, and then if you add an evolution data, you will see a whole bunch of stuff that you can modify. Okay, so what are these things that you can modify? Okay, these things are basically, it controls what options you have when it comes to evolving your weapon. Okay, so for example, this is one of the weapon evolutions that I've created in a past stream for the garlic. So as you know, the garlic evolves into the soul eater. If you wanna have a look at that, you can just click on this to refer to that. Okay, so the soul eater is a evolution, so that's why the name here is soul eater. This is how it evolves. Okay, so the condition over here, there are two options, auto and treasure chest. Okay, so if you select auto, once the conditions are met, the weapon will evolve by itself. But if you select treasure chest, only if you find a treasure chest can you get the evolved weapon. Alright, and then there is also a consumed here, which basically has a couple of options that you can choose from. Okay, so consumes is basically when the weapon evolves, does it consume both the weapon and the passive, or does it only consume the weapon, or does it only consume the passive? Okay, so in Vampire Survivors, by default, only the passives are consumed. Sorry, only the weapons are consumed, not the passives. Okay, so you can also set the evolution level. So for example, for the garlic, okay, you will find that if the garlic is level 8, this is when it evolves. And for the catalyst, these are all the different other items that you need. Okay, so for example, for the garlic, you will need the garlic to have a palm roller as well. Okay, and then the level needs to be 5. And then what is the outcome? The outcome again is a weapon data. This is the resulting item. So you can assign either a passive or a weapon. Okay, so this system is super flexible, because if you see here, the evolution always takes items. Okay, over here it takes items and it takes items. So you can, for example, assign your weapons to evolve from 2 items, and then it evolves into a passive. This is possible as well. Again, because item data means you can assign either a weapon here, or you can assign, oh sorry, I think I just messed this up. Let me just log this. Okay, so because it takes an item data, you can assign either a weapon here, or you can assign a passive here. So it's possible for you to create 2 weapons that evolve to a passive, for example. Okay, and then of course when you evolve, you can select, do you want to destroy all the weapons that are evolved in creating the evolution. Okay, so this is a simple interface that we can use to define evolution, and it's also much more flexible than the old system, right? Okay, just by virtue of how many things are in there, right? So in the article there's a table that explains all of this. Okay, so you can have a read. This is just, I've talked about all of this already. Okay, so the item class. Okay, what does the item class do? Okay, the changes to the item class are as follows. The item class basically has a couple of changes. Okay, it has 2 new functions added. Okay, actually 3 new functions added. Okay, so it has a can evolve function that's added. This checks whether the item is able to evolve at this time. Okay, how does it check it? It checks it by looking through the evolution data and seeing whether it has all the catalysts and whether the catalysts are all in the required level. Okay, so for example, if I want my knife to evolve, let's say with a spinach, okay, I can maybe knife plus spinach. Okay, I don't know what the evolution passive for the knife is, but let's say it's the spinach, right? If it's the spinach, so knife plus spinach will give you maybe something like a palm roller, for example. Okay, so the knife is level 8 and the spinach is at least level 2. Then it's able to evolve. Okay, so this can evolve checks for that. Okay, so there are 2 can evolve functions. One of it checks if a specific item is able to evolve. This one just checks your whole inventory. Okay, so there are 2 functions over here, and if you notice, for the can evolve that doesn't take any arguments, it actually goes through all the items and it individually calls the can evolve with the item inside. Okay, so you have 2 evolution checking functions, and then after that you also have a function that evolves the weapon. So when it evolves the weapon, it also reads from this evolution data table. And then what it does here is that it looks through and then it checks whether we should consume the passive or consume the weapon. If it does, then you will cycle through the inventory and then remove the respective passive or the respective weapons that are supposed to be consumed. Okay, after we consume that, we determine whether the item should consume itself. Okay, this depends on whether, of course, if you are from a passive, does the evolution consume the passive? If it does, it removes the passive or the weapon. Okay, and finally, you add the evolved weapon to the inventory. Okay, so the comments are here to help you understand the code, okay, in the article. Okay, and finally, in the do level up function, we just add a little snippet here to get the weapon, to get every item in the inventory to try and evolve. Okay, so when you try and evolve, doesn't mean that you evolve. When you call attempt evolution, if the item cannot evolve, then it will just return false. Okay, so we are just, whenever we level up, we want to check through every item in the inventory to see whether they can evolve. This is only if the condition of evolution here is set to auto, which means that over here, this condition here is set to auto. Okay, so after we are done with this, you will have a new bunch of evolution data arrays to play with. It's just one array. You have one new array to play with to determine the evolution data. Okay, one thing that you need to pay attention to, right, is that for the weapon evolution to work properly, you will need to define the weapon from both sides, which means that, let's say if knife plus spinach evolves into Pomerola, right? You define this in the knife, you also have to define this in the spinach. So in the spinach, you will define this in the opposite direction. Alright, so the spinach here, it will be, say, level 2, and then evolution data is 1, right? Then this will be, say, same thing, knife plus spinach. But now this will be 2, and then after that, you will put in the knife here. Right, the knife will go here, the knife has to be level 8, then it falls into wings, which is level 1. Okay, so you have to define this in both directions, otherwise the evolution does not always work. Okay, just one thing to take note of. So the next section that we have is that I've left. Okay, so next section we have is we need to modify the treasure chest as well. Okay, why do we need to modify the treasure chest? Okay, so with this new system here, what you will see is that when you pick up a treasure chest will simply not work. This is because, let me just show this to you. Okay, if you pick up the treasure chest, oh, it works. Okay, let me see why does it work. Surprised that it worked. Okay, where is our treasure chest? Treasure chest is pickups, treasure chest. Oh, I think it works because the inventory manager is still there. Okay, nonetheless, what you want to do is in treasure chest, right, we are just removing the parts using the inventory manager. Then we are just adding the play inventory. Okay, so we are doing things a little different over here. So because the open treasure chest no longer requires us to use the inventory to check for possible evolutions, the items are the ones that are doing it now. So we can remove all the functions that use the inventory to check for evolutions. And then here what we are doing is we're just looping through every slot in the play inventory. And then we are trying to get the item to evolve. Again, just because you get the item to attempt evolution doesn't mean that it will actually evolve. Whether it actually evolves depends on whether the conditions for the evolution are met. Okay, so it's just a whole bunch of edits. Okay, for all the codes that have the edits written out like that, it's you want to think about whether you want to just copy this outright or whether you want to edit your codes to to by yourself, because if you edit the codes by yourself, it will help you get a better understanding of what we are changing. Okay, so for me, I'm just gonna click on this and just paste a new code inside. Okay, this will give me the new treasure chest code that uses the new weapon evolution system. Okay, so we are just updating the treasure chest because the purpose of the treasure chest for us was the treasure chest never gave us items. Okay, eventually we will update the treasure chest to do so, but right now the treasure chest only gets us to evolve. Okay, which is why I'm updating the code, the evolution code for the treasure chest right here. So, okay, the last thing I'm gonna do, so this part 15 is very long, right? So we have a lot of footage and we're gonna edit it, all of this, the stream footage for the previous stream and today's stream into one part, and we want to try and keep the part, you know, be less than an hour. So what we have here is we have code for the garlic weapon, alright, but we will go through the code for the garlic weapon in the next part, alright, because this part is really long enough, right? It's a lot of stuff in this part really. So we're just gonna give you this code first, so you can just copy the code. And then just paste it. So so we have an aura over here. So for our garlic, right? Okay, the garlic uses an aura script. Okay, in the old garlic weapon that we had, the garlic worked a little differently. Okay, the garlic activated once every 1 or 2 seconds, and only on the frame that it activates will it damage. But this is not how the garlic works in Vampire Survivors. Okay, in Vampire Survivors, when you move around, whenever the garlic first touches an enemy, it will deal damage. And then after that, after it deals damage, it will track every enemy. It will track when is the last time damage was dealt. And then after the cooldown is finished, it will deal damage to every enemy in the area again. So this is a bit different from how we put out a garlic weapon, which only works for a single frame, as opposed to the garlic in the game that works for every frame. Okay, so as long as you stay in the garlic, as long as you first touch the garlic aura, it's always going to deal damage to you, as opposed to our garlic where it only deals damage in that one frame that the garlic appears. Okay, so we have to recode the garlic system, and it uses an aura. Okay, what an aura is basically it's an area where you're constantly dealing damage. Okay, and you're constantly dealing damage only after the cooldown is reached. Okay, this is a little complex to explain, I guess. So perhaps in the next part, we will drop an image to show this to you, to illustrate this a little bit clearer. Okay, I hope I'm making sense right now. Okay, so this code for the aura, because this aura doesn't only apply to the garlic, so it can also be used later on for the center water and a bunch of other weapons. Okay, this is why we are coding a generic script called an aura that we will be able to reuse for our other weapons. So this aura class here, I am going to just drop it inside here. Okay, we will go through the code in part 60. Okay, and then for us to set up the garlic, okay, what we need to do is just copy the aura weapon as well. What the aura weapon does for us is, I'm just gonna add aura weapon into the weapons folder. Right here, aura weapon. So paste it here and do a save. What the aura weapon is gonna do for me is that it's going to, when I add the aura weapon script, I'll get an error. Okay, the error is because inside the, okay, if we go all the way back to the weapon stats object, right, we commented out this aura prefect. Okay, this is because every weapon that we have can have an aura assigned as well as a projectile assigned. Okay, so if we just uncomment this part over here, the error will be fixed. And we will also get a new aura weapon for all weapon drop downs. Okay, if we go over to weapons over here, this knife here, remember this behavior drop down. Okay, I can make it either a projectile or an aura weapon. Okay, so for the garlic, what we want to do is we just want to copy this. Let's just show an explorer, and then we can copy the knife, asset, this comes to garlic. And then of course I can start modifying the stats and everything into the garlic. Alright, and then over here I will remove the knife projectile here. I'll make this into oh, I think we missed the instructions for how to create the garlic weapon. Okay, so you guys can try yourself actually. Just select aura weapon here, and then we will have to create a an aura prefab. Okay, let me just because I have to recreate the effect as well, so I'm thinking how I should go about doing it. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna set up the garlic weapon inside editing. So, okay, in the meantime, for those of you who are watching this and you're following the series, you can try it yourself first. You can follow the video here to create the effect for the garlic. Okay, what do you want to do for the garlic, right? Essentially is you want to create a new prefab for the garlic. So the same folder where you put your knife projectile prefab. So over here, let's create a new prefab, and then this will be let's call this the garlic aura. Okay, so then the garlic aura, what will be inside the garlic aura? I will just put a circle. Okay, but it's supposed to be the garlic effect. So you gotta create a garlic effect, and then just add the aura to it. Okay, that's all you gotta do. Just add the aura script to it, and then after that, you just attach this aura to the weapon that you have. So it would be where's my garlic weapon? So garlic, and then I will add the garlic aura to it. Okay. So you just gotta assign an aura to it. Where's my aura? So I can assign the knife, right? But I can't assign the aura. Oh, my bad. So, my bad. So this circle shouldn't be circle should be inside here. So sprite, and then circle. How do I get a circle? Sprites, circle, let me get this circle over here, copy, paste. Okay, so the garlic aura needs to be on the main prefab, and then we also need a collider, right? So we also need a circle collider. And this is all for the aura. You gotta make it a trigger. And then now we can set up our garlic weapon. So under scriptable object, weapons, garlic. Then I want to assign the garlic prefab, right? Weapons, garlic aura. And then you set the stats for the garlic. You gotta just go to the Vampire Survivors website, and then set the stats, set the leveling data, and then you should be able to use the garlic inside the game as well. So let's go back to the game view, and then once you are ready to use the garlic, just assign the garlic to the inventory as well. So garlic goes to inventory, right? Okay, this is the old inventory manager, so just add one more. Then we will have to find our garlic weapon data, and then just drop it inside. Okay, so now we have two weapons. When you level up, you will be able to pick from either the knife, the garlic, the wings, the spinach, or the pomerola. Okay, one thing I forgot. Okay, sorry. You have to set the UI upgrade options as well, or the options will not appear. Okay, so you have to go to canvas again, and then you can just copy the values from here. I'm just gonna copy the values from here, from the inventory manager, the old inventory manager component, and then paste it over here. Okay, so these are all just components for the upgrade window that you see right here. So the last thing is, so once you're done, we will, over here we just have a list in the article. We have a list of all the scripts that we have marked as obsolete. Okay, so I marked some scripts as obsolete across this part, so it shouldn't be difficult for you to do that. So in the Patreon project files, we have the same thing. So we also have all these scripts, and they're all marked as obsolete. So you can refer to the Patreon project files. I recommend you mark the scripts as obsolete because we are not going to be using them anymore for this project. So this helps us to track. Again, if you go to console, you will see a list of warnings and telling you that obsolete scripts are being used. So this is useful because it reminds us of all the scripts that are using all the scripts that are using all these old classes, and then we'll remove all these old classes in the future. Okay, so why do we not remove the obsolete files right away? Because in certain cases, if we just delete the file, right, because other scripts refer to these obsolete files, so by deleting an old script, it may break our project, and this is why we keep the obsolete files. So like I say here, in a future part, we may look into removing these files. And we've come to the end of this part, so, and we're coming to the end of the stream as well. Okay, it's quite late over here. It's time for me to retire. Not to bed, I have some other work to do, so I have to go and clear those things. So as usual, if you're a silver tier Patreon, you will be able to download project files, and thank you for your support. I hope that this part hasn't been too confusing for you guys. So let me know in the comments below or in the blog what you think. So, and yeah, I think so that's it. So thanks for tuning in, for those of you who jumped in the chat. I've got all the footage I need, so I'll see you guys next time, probably next Tuesday, and we will be recording some more footage for perhaps the next part, or I'll be working on something. I'll think of something to work on. Okay, so Happy New Year guys, again, all the best. I'll see you guys around.